Have you ever heard of an empire that stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the sands of Mesopotamia, whose legacy still echoes in our governments, our languages, and even the food we eat today? And yet, an empire whose name barely appears in school textbooks? Imagine an empire so powerful it terrified Rome, humbled Greece, and shaped the map of Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, only to vanish into the shadows of history. If you've never heard of it, don't worry, you're not alone. Most people haven't. And yet, without it, the world as we know it would be utterly different. Before we dive in, I want you to pause and think. Which empire do you believe changed the course of history only to be forgotten by time? Drop your guesses in the comments. I'll be reading them all, and I guarantee many of you will be surprised at the answer. This is the story of the Carthaginian Empire. Carthage, born from Phoenician settlers, merchants of the sea who left their homeland in the Levant and founded a city on the North African coast around 814 BCE. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, just another colonial outpost among many. But Carthage was not destined to remain a backwater trading hub. In less than 3 centuries, it became a superpower that rivaled, and for a time outshone, every other empire around the Mediterranean. The Carthaginians were heirs to the Phoenicians, legendary sailors whose alphabet would inspire the Greeks and Romans, whose purple dye became the luxury of kings. But Carthage, unlike its mother cities, wasn't content to be merely a trading station. It had ambition. It expanded into Spain, colonized Sardinia and Corsica, dominated Sicily, and controlled crucial trade routes across the Mediterranean. Carthage became the economic beating heart of the ancient world. The city itself was a marvel. Ancient writers describe its harbors, yes, harbors, plural, one for trade and a secret one for its navy, shaped like a perfect circle with docks for over 200 warships. At the center rose an island, the command post, from which Carthage could launch fleets that could strike anywhere, from the coasts of Greece to the shores of Egypt. The wealth of Carthage was legendary. Gold, silver, grain, spices, and precious goods from Africa and beyond poured into the city. But here's where the story sharpens into drama. Carthage was not just rich, it was feared. And when another rising power, Rome, crossed its path, the stage was set for one of the most legendary rivalries in human history, the Punic Wars. Most people know Hannibal, the general who crossed the Alps with elephants to invade Italy. But few realize the broader context, that Hannibal was the spearhead of an empire fighting for survival against Rome's relentless hunger. Carthage wasn't some villainous foil in Rome's heroic saga. It was Rome's equal, arguably Rome's superior, for centuries. Let's pause here and imagine. What if Carthage had won? What if Rome had fallen instead of Carthage? Would the languages we speak today descend from Punic instead of Latin? Would democracy, as filtered through Rome, even exist in the same way? Would Christianity have ever spread, given Carthage's religious traditions? These are the haunting what-ifs of history. The Carthaginians were pragmatic traders, but their culture carried mysteries that even Rome couldn't quite understand. Their gods, Baal, Hammon, and Tanit, were worshipped with rituals that shocked outsiders. Stories of child sacrifices, whether exaggerated Roman propaganda or grim reality, painted Carthage as a city of strange and terrifying faith. Yet archaeology complicates this narrative. Evidence suggests that while child sacrifice may have occurred, Carthage also had burial grounds for infants that might have been misinterpreted by hostile Romans. Still, the Romans needed a villain, and Carthage played the part. The First Punic War ended with Carthage's defeat, losing Sicily. But they weren't crushed yet. They rebounded, seizing territory in Spain and building an empire anew. It was here that Hannibal, son of Hannibal Barca, swore an oath of eternal hatred toward Rome. And when Rome struck again, Hannibal led Carthage into the Second Punic War. Picture the scene. Hannibal, facing the impossible, decides not to defend Carthage directly, but to take the fight to Rome itself. He gathers an army, not just of Carthaginians, but of Spaniards, Gauls, Numidians, mercenaries from across the Mediterranean. And then, the Alps. Snow, treacherous cliffs, avalanches, hostile tribes. It was a march so audacious that even centuries later, generals studied it with awe. And out of that frozen hell, Hannibal emerged into Italy. Then came the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE. One of the greatest tactical masterpieces in military history, Hannibal's outnumbered forces encircled and annihilated a Roman army of perhaps 80,000 men. Entire legions were slaughtered. Rome's allies wavered, and for a moment, it seemed the eternal city would fall. But Rome was stubborn. Rome refused to die. And Carthage, despite Hannibal's brilliance, lacked the political unity to support him fully. Carthage hesitated when it should have struck. Hannibal waited for reinforcements that never came. Slowly, the tide turned. By the time of the Third Punic War, Carthage was a shadow of its former glory. And here enters one of the most chilling chapters of antiquity. The Roman senator Cato the Elder ended every speech, regardless of subject, with the same word of Eishim, Chares, Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. And so it was. In 146 BCE, Rome besieged the city. The Carthaginians, desperate and starving, fought with the fury born of extinction. Men, women, even children resisted in the streets. But Rome overwhelmed them. The city was burned for 17 days. Survivors were sold into slavery. Carthage, the great empire of merchants and sailors, was wiped from the map. Roman writers claimed they salted the earth so nothing would grow again. A myth, but one that captures the annihilation. And then, silence. An empire that had ruled seas and rivaled Rome itself was reduced to rubble and memory. The Punic language, once widespread, faded into whispers. The Carthaginian gods were forgotten. And history, written by Rome, painted Carthage as little more than an enemy defeated. But history is never so simple. Modern research has revealed just how deeply Carthage influenced the world. Its naval innovations shaped Roman shipbuilding. Its trading networks connected Africa and Europe long before Rome did. Its agricultural techniques, documented in the writings of Mago, a Carthaginian author, were so advanced that Rome translated his work after conquering the city. Carthage's existence forced Rome to become stronger, more disciplined, more ambitious. Without Carthage, there might not have been an empire of Rome at all. So the forgotten empire that changed the world? It was Carthage, a city that dared to rival Rome, that pushed the limits of human ambition, and whose ashes fertilized the growth of the Roman Empire that followed. And maybe that's the true irony. Carthage's destruction wasn't the end of its story. It was the beginning of ours. For every time we speak Latin-derived words, every time we study Roman history, every time we talk about strategy, empire, or even endurance against overwhelming odds, we are also in some way echoing the legacy of Carthage. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the world would have been better if Carthage had won instead of Rome? Would history have taken a brighter path or a darker one? Let's debate in the comments. I'll be watching for your takes. And if you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of forgotten history, don't let it end here. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with others who love uncovering the mysteries of the past. Together, we'll keep these stories alive. This is Time's Battlefield, where history isn't just remembered, it's relived.